gaps under doors and the opportunity to seal off this room from the rest of the house. And there was a big gap under this door.
Yeah.
And I can see, since our last visit, you have installed this draft stopper. And what we're going to see today are 3 types of door draft stoppers. They're designed for different doors, different purposes. And this one is the vertical seal, as you've described, Luke. Let's go to the front door, because the front door is a classic. The amount of light that was coming through the bottom of your door was indicative of how big the gap was, and would have been having significant amount of heat either lost or drafts as a result of that. So let's have a look at the work you've done.
Here we've installed the angular drop down stopper, and it's up above the carpet there, but when it gets across to here, it hits this little block here, and that pushes it down. This was a very breezy doorway, the old sliding door. It had about an 8mm gap at the bottom, and we've installed a little brush mechanism that runs across the tiles and stops that under door gap. It works really well.
Now look, I see you've been very busy in the kitchen. Those wall vents we talked about last time that were permanently open, meaning the heat in winter was escaping through those wall vents. And in this room, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 vents. And I see you've been very busy and you've covered them all.
Yep.
Plastered it in, painted it.
Invisible. We had our painter do the plastering and then paint it over the top.
Well done. Well done. It will make a significant difference.
Yep.
Last time we visited Luke's place, we had a look in the roof cavity, and essentially most of the roof area had no insulation. There was a little bit, but very sparse and full of gaps. So in effect, the insulation was providing no material benefit in isolating the heat that was generated in the roof cavity from the living area. And conversely, the heat that was generated in winter in the building, in the house, was escaping through the roof. So since our last visit, Luke has installed insulation, and the key thing to insulation is how thick, and typically R values of about 3.5 to 4, and we'll have a look at that. But probably more importantly than whether it's 3.5 or 4 is how well it's been installed. And what we mean by that is whether there are any gaps. So we're going to have a look to see if there are. Prior to stepping into the roof cavity, you should turn the power off, just as a safety measure in case there are any exposed wires in the roof cavity. One source of significant leaks in a house is around exhaust fans. Most fans are not sealed, and as a result are permanently allowing heat to escape from the house, or in summer, heat to enter from the roof cavity. So a simple measure to retrofit these exhaust fans is to put one of these devices in the roof cavity over the top of the exhaust fan. And when the exhaust fan is turned on, the air pressure forces these flaps up and the air passes out of the room into the roof cavity. And when the exhaust fan is turned off, the weight of these flaps drop and seal. It's a simple retrofit. Now most houses today will install exhaust fans that have these seals built in. But when we're looking at older houses, most of them don't have it, and this is how you retrofit it. So I'm going to pass this through to Luke, and Luke is going to install it. Through to you, Luke.
Okay.
So we can see this draft stopper operating that is situated over the top of the exhaust fan, and you can see the flaps that are up that are allowing the air to move through, and when the exhaust fan is turned off, those flaps will drop down. Yep, go for it, Luke. And now you see how those flaps have dropped and sealed that whole vent. Now there's a little bit of housekeeping work for you, Luke. Is there needs to be some insulation around there. You don't want that plaster exposed. You want to get the insulation in there. It's a bit of fiddly work, but it's worth doing. Yeah. And as we've inspected through the roof, I'd consider the installation job here is a good quality job. The builder you've used has done a good job. There's just a few little tidying up measures, and you can see right here, this gap. You don't want those gaps. You don't need those gaps. And with a bit more work, you would have been able to have that sealed. The thing to remember is, if you've got 95% coverage, the insulation up here will have about a 50% effectiveness. If you've got 100% cover, you've got 100% effectiveness. So that 5% gap is significant in reducing the effectiveness of this insulation. The thing that I noted and I was impressed with is the insulation goes all the way to the edge of the ceiling, into where the eaves are. Back on the ground, our feet firmly placed on the ground. Occupational hazard of climbing into roof spaces. Note to self, do not wear a white shirt. Now, the work that we've inspected has been good. There were a couple gaps. The ones we spotted, you had some surplus bats in the roof, you were able to fill them. The difference it will make will be significant. And would you like to make any comments in the few days that have passed since you've installed the insulation?
It seems to be more contained. You know, it just feels different. It feels warmer. It feels warmer at night when you want to keep a bit of warmth in. And on the days when we had cold and we got the air in at night, it lasted longer into the day. Yeah. So, you know, by 6 o'clock, we were still 8 degrees cooler inside than outside.
So it was not a surprise to me when we first visited the place, and most of the roof cavity had no insulation. And what was there was very sparse, and there were many gaps. So in effect, it had no function. The thing that I was looking for when I was in the roof was to see how far the insulation went. Did it cover the entire roof cavity? And it did. Because for most installations, the hard to get corners where the roof and the ceiling have small gaps, they're the hard bits to put the insulation in, and they get left out. Your builder installed it correctly. Okay, so we've talked about the insulation in the roof. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was a walk around the outside of the house and just talk about the orientation. Now obviously you can't change the orientation of the house, but because it is exposed to the west and the east, in summer the house will be hotter than had it been designed and swung around. I see that you've got a retrofit here with the veranda, and this is brilliant by design in that it offers great protection to that west sun. We talked previously about sisolation. It's a brilliant barrier in reducing the radiant heat that would be coming through. So in summer that tin would be extremely hot, and it will be radiating heat down through here. And in winter, there's a risk that you could get condensation. Sisolation provides benefits principally to reduce the amount of condensation, but it also provides a very important barrier to the transfer of heat and then radiant heat to the occupancy in summer if there's insulation installed, and it's installed in such a way that it's loose and it's sagged. Now, the one comment I will make, and as brilliant as the work is here, is there's one design flaw that I see in terms of energy efficiency, and that is that this veranda will trap heat in summer. and there would have been a benefit in having in the design an opportunity for the heat that accumulates under here to drain up. And I notice here with the eaves, that's open, so there is an opportunity for some heat to pass up into the eave. But the problem with that is, in the roof cavity, in summer, the air in there will be very hot and it will be under pressure. So there won't be much opportunity for the air to be flown up into that roof cavity. So if you had your time again, one opportunity would be to lift this roof so there's actually a physical gap between the eave and the veranda so the air can drain up and out. Now, one of the things I observed in the roof was the bats were of good thickness and they're rated at an R value of around 4. Now, the building regs, and particularly Sustainable Victoria, recommend a minimum of 3.5, and you've exceeded the minimum. So the 4 is a good rating. Some people will go for R5, R6, and they work on the basis that more must be better. Our view is there is a tipping point, and 4 I think is the sweet spot, because when you go for an R value of 6 or even higher, you're introducing more thermal mass in the roof cavity. And the downside of more thermal mass is it traps more heat. So therefore in summer, the roof cavity takes longer to cool down at night. And in summer, it's the hot nights that you're trying to protect yourself from, more so than the hot days. So you want to design your house so it cools down at night, because it's the hot nights that stop you sleeping. And R4 is the sweet spot. More when you have thermal mass, the house takes longer to cool down, and that has an adverse effect on how comfortable it is at night. So you've hit the jackpot. You've had a good builder who's installed it, you've chosen the right size with an R4, and we've done a little bit of tweaking with a few gaps that we found, and life's sweet. Well done. So the beauty with the expandable foam is it gives you complete coverage.
Yeah.
The downside is it provides brilliant habitat for vermin. They love it. The mice, the rats will burrow into it. So if you're going to have the expandable foam, you've got to be on top of the vermin. The other product that you could give consideration to is actually bats that are stiff, so they can sit in under the floorboards, and you attach them. Fiddly work, timely, but it does work, and it has less of a vermin problem. And the third product to give consideration to is a variation of the insulation you've got in the roof cavity, which will be purpose designed to fit under the floorboards and is relatively easy to secure under the floor. So you've got 3 options. So you could have the fiberglass bats, you could have the firm, which is either polystyrene or some other variant, or the spray on. But the thing is, you know, with the character of this house, these floorboards are wonderful and they tell a great story. And putting something like that hides that part of the story and the history of the house.
Yeah.
From an insulation point of view, I would be looking under the floorboards to get the biggest benefit. That's what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
So we've walked around the house, we've gone through the roof cavity, we've walked around the garden, we've covered the key things that can improve the energy efficiency of our house. And we've started from a pretty high base, apart from the roof insulation, but you've made up for lost ground very quickly and you've got best practice up there now. So this pretty much closes off the discussion on what are the simple things at relatively low cost to make a significant difference. And it will be great to come back in 12 months' time when you've gone through the whole seasonal cycles to hear what was the differences with all of that. Well done for taking the initiative on those small tweaks and for lifting the game. All right.